Greetings, Ohio Valley. This is Dan Lima with OSU Extension from Belmont County.
And this is Karen Cox from WVU Extension in Ohio County. Thanks for tuning in to Extension Calling, your source for research-based information for the farm, garden, and home. Hey, we just wanted to say thank you to everyone who has sent us an evaluation. That information is so very important. We are still looking for feedback from our listeners. So if there's a show that you've listened to that has really helped you, then please feel free to go ahead and fill out that evaluation again and just let us know how you're using the information for the show.
Yeah, let us know how our show is helping you, whether it's a major thing, whether it's a little gold nugget you're able to get out of it. We try to mix a lot of our experiences with the show and just want to know how it helps you out.
You can fill out these evaluations as many times as you want. And also, you can use those evaluations to tell us if there's a topic that you would like us to address. So we do welcome that. And we're always looking for new ideas on things that you feel are important. So let us know what you want to learn from our show. You can find the evaluation online at https://bit.ly extension calling evaluation. And that is https://bit.ly, so that's bit.ly, extension calling evaluation. And extension calling and evaluation all need to be capitalized, but those are the only caps you need to worry about. Or you can just call us at the office. You can reach me at 304-234-3673. That's 304-234-3673.
And you can also contact me at 740-695-1455. That's 740-695-1455.
And welcome everybody to mid-June, where a lot of producers actually got their hay up. Very hot days, probably the warmest yet.
And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today is a little bit about safety, just trying to keep you safe this summer as you get out there in the heat and work. So let's think a little bit about the fact that our kids are out of school right now, and everyone's going on vacation, everyone's coming out to visit the family farm, and some kids, especially city kids, come out to the farm, don't quite know how to be safe on the farm. So you need to have some pretty firm policies in place ahead of time just to help keep them safe on the farm. And even for your own kids that grow up and live on the farm every day, sometimes we don't pay quite close enough attention to them and what rules need to be in place to keep everyone safe. Kind of a serious topic today, but it's a really important topic because every 3 days, a child dies in an agriculture-related accident. Every 3 days. You don't want that to be your child. And in 2012, 374 farmers and farm workers died from a work-related injury. Tractors annually claim 125 lives in a year, and that makes them the biggest danger on the farm. So the most important thing you really want to have in place anytime anyone is on your farm is no riders. Don't let kids ride on the tractor with you or on the baler or on the mower. It doesn't matter if you have never had an issue before and they've done it this whole time. Just stop it right now before it's too late.
Right, because as soon as there is an incident, then
it's too late.
Then it's too late, absolutely. And you can't, it's like the whole helmet rule. And this has always been a pet peeve of mine, Karen, but you know, people are always like, oh, you know what? I grew up not wearing a helmet and I'm just fine. Well, you weren't one of the unfortunate ones that fell off the bike and cracked your head open either. And the ones that did aren't here to say that. So it's really just bad logic to think like that.
Yeah. And we've learned a lot about head injuries. And then there's also the people that have lost limbs and the people that have lost children. You know, it's all from you hit a weird bump, there's a ditch that a groundhog dug a new hole overnight and you didn't know it was there. You hit it, there's a weird bump, someone flies off, and tragedy happens.
Right. And there are tractors that are meant for one person, and there's tractors that are meant for multiple people. You know, if your family comes over and let's say they're from the city and they haven't done something like that, well, see if your neighbor might have a tractor like that, and then talk to them and make it an enjoyable but safe experience and use the equipment as it should be used.
Yeah, and so basically, if the tractor has 2 seat belts, you can put 2 people in it. If it doesn't, then don't. Plain and simple. Another thing is ATVs. ATVs are a very scary thing for a lot of people, especially for young adults who like to test their limits, right? All teenagers are invincible, and so they want to go as fast as they can. Helmets, schmelmets, they ride them on roads and through ditches. There's a lot of dangerous things that young adults can do on an ATV. So make sure that whoever is riding your ATV has had a safety course, or that you walk them through a full safety training, and so that they know what's expected of them, how to respect the machine to prevent tragedy from occurring.
That's right. And ATVs are meant for one person. And typically what's not understood is those tires aren't made for the roads. They will easily flip on roadways and pavement. So just be very careful about where you're riding those. Make sure it's either on a dirt road or it's on grass. Those tires aren't meant to be on pavement, and they could easily flip over. And again, those ATVs are meant for one person.
And they're also fairly low, so oncoming vehicles have a very hard time seeing ATVs on the road. So keep that in mind if you have to go from one field to another, that an oncoming vehicle may not see you as well as another car because you're just not as high up. Especially with all the oil and gas traffic on the roads now, those big trucks cannot stop. It's not that they won't stop, it's that they can't stop. You get a fully loaded truck out there, it's going to take them, a football field length to come to a full stop from 55 miles an hour? And that's slamming on the brakes.
Right.
It's still going to take them that much time. So if you're hanging out on the road and you don't pay attention, then that's a very serious injury, and potentially even a fatality. So anyway, back onto the farm. So when you're working with baling equipment, let's focus on that for a little bit. You want to make sure that everything that you're using is in good working order before you get out in the field. Nothing is worse than getting out in the field and finding out that something's not working and having to truck it all the way back to the barn or having to fix it out in the field. So make sure that you check all of the gears, make sure everything is properly oiled and greased, make sure all your belts are tight, make sure all the gears are working before you get it out in the field.
Or even the day before. So if there is something wrong, you have time to get it done, to pick up a part, to fix it, and you're not running behind, which will just cause you more stress, maybe take some shortcuts, and possibly have something else happen.
Yeah, and that really brings up a good point, Dan, because one of the worst things you can do is operate your farm equipment when you're angry. When you are really frustrated and really angry, we tend not to pay very good attention to what we're doing. And the only thing that's really good to do on the farm when you're angry is pull weeds, because then you're really aggressive and you get it done fast. But if you're working with animals or being on a tractor, you don't want to do that when you're angry. Take some time, cool down, have a drink, rehydrate yourself, let it go, and then get back to work. Because when we're frustrated, we get tunnel vision and we just don't pay attention to what we're doing.
Right.
We're focused on this one thing, and it could have nothing to do with what we're doing. But it really can cause accidents to happen.
Right. What do they say again? Haste makes waste, right?
Haste makes waste. That's right.
Yeah, those old cliches, I'll tell you what, they got some wisdom in there.
All right. So here's another thing to recognize. That PTO that powers all of your awesome farm equipment, it runs at 600 to 900 RPMs. All right. And so I don't care how big and strong you are, that's going to launch you like a rocket if you get caught in it. It will spin you around just as fast as it spins a piece of twine. It doesn't care if you're a 300-pound weightlifter. It will spin you. And there's nothing you can do about it. A lot of people have lost limbs from PTOs. Never step over a moving PTO.
Right.
Never reach in to fix something that's moving. That should be common sense, right?
Yeah.
Don't stick your hand in that. It's going to bite you.
And you know what? and if you've never gotten around to getting one of those covers for your PTO shaft, that's probably the cheapest solution to a very, very dangerous thing that could potentially happen. It's a plastic cover that goes around the PTO shaft while it's spinning, so that if you do accidentally bump into it, nothing will happen. Something very simple, but very useful. So having a cover for the PTO shaft, very important thing to have. And also when you are working with stuff like that, make sure you're not wearing loose clothing. Make sure your hair isn't going everywhere. Just, again, if you're in a rush, maybe you won't notice something like that. And you're right. That's a very fatal mistake.
Yeah.
And that one's going to cost you a lot. So honestly, that cover's so cheap and so easy to put on there. And that could really mitigate major problems.
Yeah, and some other things you can do that are really simple is, alluding back to what Dan was saying earlier, take your time and do it right. Don't rush yourself. I know sometimes when we've got a 48-hour window when we're not supposed to have rain and then those storm clouds come in and it's coming and you got to get the hay up before it rains, but don't rush it. Don't operate machinery faster than it's designed to go. It's going to cause clogging and it's going to frustrate you and you're going to end up getting hurt. Another thing you want to do is when you're operating your baler, go along the contour. If you're on a steep hill, don't go straight up and down because when it ejects that bale, it's going to go rolling down the hill. And those things weigh as much of a small car. So think of it as a small car rolling towards you in a very high speed. Not going to be a pleasant day for you.
Right. I mean, they could range anywhere from a ton to 1,000 pounds.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, just make sure that you are ejecting the rolls along the contour. And that's also going to help you operate your vehicle a little more safely as well. It's going to help preserve the soil because you're not going to be creating ruts that are going straight up and down. And that's always a big thing on the farm. You don't want to do anything that's going to give water an opportunity to just roll super fast down the hill. The slower that you can make that water go, the less erosion that will occur because of it, and the healthier your land will be. All right, so another thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is prepare for a fire. Equipment fires happen all the time, and you should always have an ABC fire extinguisher on your tractor. You should really have one in a vehicle, as in any vehicles that you have out on the farm. They're not expensive. They're really easy to get, and they could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage. It seems like a no-brainer, but it's one of those things that gets overlooked. You should have a fire extinguisher on the tractor with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and when you're out in the country, out in the farm, you're not always going to have a cell phone signal, but you should always let people at least know where you're going. So somebody should know where you are at all times. So if something does happen, then you're not missing in action, right? It's these little things too that really get overlooked. The fire extinguisher, yeah, I mean, if something does happen, having that thing just right there so you could reach down, grab it, prevent equipment damage, prevent you from getting hurt, just preventing an array of problems, real easy to do, and it's just a really wonderful thing to have around. In fact, if you don't have one in your kitchen, you probably should too.
Yeah, actually, they recommend you have one on each floor of your home, or the rule of thumb is to have one within 20 steps, because that's about how much time you have to actually make a difference in a fire before it gets out of hand. So you need to have more than one in your house, in all honesty, but at the absolute minimum, have one in your kitchen.
Depends how big your house is.
Oh, yeah.
My house doesn't. I think 20 steps in my own backyard. So.
Well, that's true. But yeah, having one in those high danger areas.
Right. And in the ABC. Now, let's talk a little bit about that. ABC fire extinguishers will do electrical fires, will do chemical fires, and will do wood burning fires and fuels. So, if you have that kind of fire extinguisher, you're good for all kinds of fires. That's why it's recommended that it has both the A, B, and C label on it, so that you can use that fire extinguisher essentially on any fire that exists.
That's right. And so while we're talking about fire and hay and wetness, remember, if you are putting away wet hay, you need to monitor its temperature. You need to make sure that it's not going to spontaneously combust. Wet hay, as it decomposes or gets dried out, it will increase in temperature, and those temperatures can cause fire. You should never walk on top of a stack of hay, especially if it's warm, because a fire could be down inside of it, and your foot pressure, you could fall right down into it and get injured pretty badly. So do monitor your hay temperatures once you get them in the barn, especially if they weren't absolutely at their best dryness before you pack them up. We know that we always try for the best, but nature doesn't always cooperate. So if you know that you've put up some hay that's a little bit wetter than you would have preferred, keep an eye on it.
Right. Absolutely.
All right, so let's go back to being on the contour. When you're on the contour, you should make sure that you're adjusting your wheel tread to the suggested settings so that the tractor can maintain balance and avoid a rollover. Rollovers, most tractors today have rollover protection. And if you are driving a tractor that does not have rollover protection, you can often retrofit it onto it. It's a really important thing to do. You know, every year we hear of farmer deaths, and we can't really lose any of you guys. You're all important, and gals. Everyone, all of the farmers out there are extremely important. We can't lose any of you, so please take the proper equipment and precautions to protect yourself and your family. All right, but anyway, so you adjust your tractor wheel tread to the suggested setting to prevent the rollover, and also make sure that the load you're pulling isn't heavier than what you're pulling it with. So once you get 5 or 6 of those round bales, your trailer is going to be 9,000-10,000 pounds, and so that's really going to adjust how your tractor is pulling it. So make sure that you're not trying to do too much in too little time. Give yourself that time to be safe, and if you miss a bale of hay, well, that's a lot better than missing a limb. Or
right. And that goes to the point of not rushing things. You get done what you get done. What you can't do.
Right.
A day's, there's only 24 hours in a day, and you got to do the best you can.
Yeah.
With what you got.
Keep that bale on the upslope side of the tractor, and avoid driving across a slope with that bale on the tractor when you're transporting it. Drive slow, keep the bale low to the ground when it's on that fork, and don't turn suddenly. That's again, that weight is going to shift on the tractor, and while you can turn pretty suddenly when it's not loaded, when it's got that extra weight on it, you have to be careful. And if a bale is rolling, just get out of the way. Don't try to stop it. Just let it go. It's going to get to the ditch eventually, whether or not it takes you and your tractor out. Just let it go. Again, it's like a small car running full speed downhill. Just get out of the way.
Yeah.
Also, if you have a rear-loaded mounting spike, that's going to be ideal because it's going to eliminate the danger of rollback, and it's not going to block your forward vision. Make sure you're inserting the spike into the center of the bale, and wagons that are used to haul bales need to be of the right width and also have racks to prevent the bales from moving off either end during transport. Remember, they're round, they roll. And don't carry a bale on a front end loader while you're pulling a loaded wagon. All right, again, take time, do it right, do it safe. All right, so what if you're doing square bales? Again, same things, pretty much similar. Never stick your hand in moving equipment. There's lots of knives. Make sure that your baler twine is properly wound on the spool. Don't hand feed baler twine. Should we say that one again? Don't hand feed baler twine. Just don't do it.
Yeah, and if you're working on something, make sure it's shut off. Make sure
the PTO is disconnected.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are the small things that could prevent major tragedies.
All right, so let's move on to some non-hay related dangers, things we can protect ourselves with. And Dan, why don't you take us on that journey?
Right, so something else that's in the farm, electrical fence. We have electricity in our barns. Not always the best quality, but and it's really important to know overhead power lines, things like that. Some general tips for working around electricity, for instance, is make sure you're inspecting for those hazards. So exposed electrical wires. Make sure you don't have any wires that are bare. Check for damage on electrical boxes. Make sure you're making sure you're keeping up with those things that could cause a lot of problems. Could cause a lot of fires that we talked about also. The fire extinguisher, a very important thing to have. And if you do see an electrical fire, we talked about the ABC fire extinguisher. Don't throw water on it.
No.
No, I mean, and you panic, that's why having a plan in place so you don't panic and if you see the fire extinguisher, you know what, your brain goes on automatic freak out mode and you'll grab that and spray. If that's not there, the brain's not really thinking correctly, and you might grab a bucket of water and throw it on there and cause a bigger fire. So make sure you're keeping up with electrical equipment, making sure you know where it is before you're working with it. Whether you're climbing on something, whether you're putting something up, whatever, crossing the farm and maybe power lines, electrical fencing. Just make sure it's in working order, and that that you have things like a fire extinguisher by the boxes in the barn where you could potentially use it and save yourself a barn or possibly a life.
Yeah, and those things, they're all worth a whole lot.
Right, and look for those frayed electrical cords. So inspect the wires, making sure they're good to go. Take one day and just look at these things, and
yeah, and maybe we should touch on a little bit about how to use a fire extinguisher. It's the passive pull, aim at the base of the flame,
that's right. Squeeze.
And sweep. So you got to go back and forth, cover the flame from the base. Don't try to get it from the top, because what you're trying to do is cut off the oxygen from the base of the flame, the source of the fire. Now, one of the things with electrical fires is we had an electrical fire not too long ago, and don't be surprised if it keeps sparking back up. So while one of you is with the fire extinguisher, the other one who knows that you're in the barn should be able to call 911 and get some professional assistance out there to make sure. Also, turning off the power at the source could be helpful to get out any kind of electrical fire.
Right. So call for help as soon as you see something like that. Yeah, make sure you shut off the power.
If you can get to it safely. If not, let the professionals do it.
Yeah, but and don't try to pull them out of there, because that current's just going to go right onto you, and now we got 2 victims. So
right, yeah, never touch someone who is being electrocuted, and never stand in a puddle next to someone who is being electrocuted, and never touch an electric fence in a thunderstorm. If lightning hits the electric fence on one end of the farm, it goes really fast to the other end of the farm, and if you don't know that it's there, I mean, you can definitely have a bad day.
Yeah, and be careful where you're working with electricity. Make sure you don't have any standing water. You're in locations with frayed wires that have plenty of dried hay, just stuff like that. Watch for sparking, watch for damp areas, and just wear gloves. Wear gloves when you're working with electricity.
Not just leather gloves either.
Yeah, I mean, better than barehanded.
That's true.
But absolutely right.
Yeah.
If you have rubber insulated gloves, that's the best thing. Make sure you're wearing nice insulated shoes, so that you're protecting yourself that way too. So just wearing gloves, wearing rubber soled shoes. In fact, that kind of goes for everything.
Right.
When you're working with heavy equipment, when you're moving heavy objects, don't wear your flip-flops. Make sure you're wearing something that covers your whole foot, and you don't want to lose a toe, you don't want to lose a foot.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot of barefoot farmers out there that just enjoy the feel of mud squishing between their toes. That's fine when you're harvesting vegetables.
Or picking or pulling weeds. You can even go barefoot angry pulling weeds.
Right, there you go. Angry barefoot weed pulling. It's a new type of therapy. But you have to dress appropriately for the task at hand. And so whether you are spraying pesticides, pulling weeds, running a tractor, fixing electrical wiring, make sure that you are wearing the proper equipment regardless. Always turn off the tractor when you're working on it, and always turn off the electricity when you're working on it. Sometimes we get in a hurry and we just forget those little simple steps. And also, make sure you set the brake on that tractor too. I know I'm getting back to tractor safety, but it's a big deal. My uncle has 9 pins in his leg from a tractor rolling back when he jumped off to grab something. So, all right. So back to where we were. Let you go back
there. So yeah, let's kind of, I'm on a subject of personal protective equipment. So let's kind of keep on with that one. Now, the chainsaw is another piece of equipment very readily used in a farm full of trees, and you got to get them out of the way, and people utilize chainsaws. Again, don't wear flip-flops when utilizing a chainsaw. Make sure you're wearing boots. Make sure you're wearing gloves.
Steel-toed boots are preferable with chainsaw use.
Absolutely, yeah, preferable. And that is the best option, but wearing at least something that covers your toes, very, very important. Make sure you're wearing a face shield, especially if you don't want to lose an eye.
Yeah, those chips come flying out really fast, and they can easily get into your eye. So face shields, a grill, you don't need a chemical face shield, but a grill, just like a screen. Usually they come attached to your hard hat. I'll highly recommend getting the one with the screen and the earmuffs on it. Just spend the extra $5.
Yeah, what was that, Karen? Hearing protection, also very important to have. You don't want to be losing your hearing slowly, and then it doesn't come back. Your eyesight, your hearing, your limbs, all very important things. Make sure you're wearing a hard hat in case something falls, especially if you're actually cutting a tree down. You start cutting a tree, those limbs can be kind of weak. You don't cut nice trees, right? We cut dead trees, and dead trees are unstable.
This is true. Dead wood is unpredictable, and you're never sure where that soft pocket's going to be. Also, if you're cutting a tree with twisted grain, it also will fall unpredictably. So watch out for those things.
Right. And those are the limbs. That's when the limbs come down. Healthy trees don't drop limbs.
Yeah, they do. But anyway, that's a different story.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Not as often, and you're usually not standing under it. How's that? Also wear chaps. So
that is
there's
the most important thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely, but everything's important. But chaps, they're special chainsaw chaps that are designed to have a thread that, if cut, will stop the chainsaw.
Right, and so basically, it's like ballistic nylon. So it's just layer upon layer upon layer of nylon threads that are going cross pattern, and when the chainsaw hits them, basically it just jams up the chain and prevents it from spinning. And that will save your life.
Right. And if it did save your life, hopefully you got a new pair.
Yes. If you have used them, if the chainsaw has cut them, if you spilled oil on them, or if you have washed them improperly, you need to replace them. Make sure you follow the washing rules, because if you wash them improperly, they will not be able to protect you as they should. As the one piece of equipment people overlook every time. They cost $40 to $80. And let me tell you, if you hit your femoral artery in your leg, you've got 4 minutes.
Is that why they call it femoral?
It's 4 minutes. That's all the time you have. So if you're out in the pasture, it's going to take someone more than 4 minutes to get to you. And if you don't have chaps on, that's, Anyway, we're about out of time.
Yes.
If you have any questions about farm safety or tips we can give you, give us a call. And my number is 304-234-3673.
And this is Dan Lima with OSU Extension in Belmont County. And you can reach me at 740-695-1455. And pretty close to summer. And have a wonderful June.
Thanks for listening to Extension Calling. This show is a collaboration between OSU Belmont County Extension Educator Dan Lima and WVU Ohio County Extension Agent Karen Cox. If you'd like a transcript of this show, contact us at the office. Also, let us know if you enjoy the show by ranking us on your podcast app.